Welcome to part 2 of our series on installing the Oversized Tire Fitment Kit. First, we're going to start out by prepping a couple things on these parts. Now it's up to you, but you can choose to paint these parts if you'd like to. Just keep in mind that they are going in the wheel well area and they will probably get chipped and damaged by rocks and other road debris very quickly, so paint probably won't hold up very well on these. They are aluminum and will not rust, so you don't have to worry about any of that happening, and they're fine just to install as they are uncoated. You could also coat them in some sort of truck bed liner, a rubberized coating if you'd like to. However, some of those are pretty thick, so they may affect fitment of the product, so be aware of that if you coat them with a truck bed liner. So when you're getting started here, you'll want to install this rubber edge trim first onto the fender liner pieces. So you'll get three pieces of edge trim for each half, 6 pieces total. They'll be pre-cut to length. So this longest piece goes along the outside edge on each piece here. That will contact the fender when it's on the vehicle, so that'll prevent any squeaking or any noise from this contacting the metal fender. There's another short piece that'll go right on the inside here on each of these, and then the middle or medium length piece is going to go onto the outside of this one closest to where this tab is on each piece. Installing the edge trim is fairly easy. You just want to start at one end, push the groove down over the edge of the aluminum part, and then just work your way down all the way, pushing it on, and make sure it's pushed down and fully seated onto the part. If it's hanging off farther than it should be, the part might not fit into the fender well properly. So get those all installed, and then the next item you can do is install your C4 badges. So those come with 2 1024 screws with a flat washer and a nylock nut to go on the back. You're going to use an 1/8 inch Allen key for the button head screws and a 3/8 wrench to hold the nut on the back side. You can go ahead and install that logo and tighten on that hardware. So that's all you will need to do to prep your parts on the workbench first. Now we're going to move on to showing you what we need to do first on the truck. So right here we have all of our parts for the driver's side fender liner kit laid out on the table. This is our main liner plate, our front liner plate, and then we have 3 small brackets here which will all be marked D or P for driver or passenger side. And then we have this one piece here, which is a connecting plate to bolt these 2 liner plates together. These are the same on either side, so they are interchangeable. And then of course we have our hardware kit to put everything together. Alright, so we moved on to doing some prep work on the truck to get ready to install our high clearance fender kit. So the goal for this whole kit, of course, is to make as much room and clearance for oversized tires as possible. Now, first thing we need to start with to make that happen is we need to bend over the pinch weld in the fender here and hammer back some of this material. Now you can see that this truck has already been modified a little bit. Someone has cut out this portion of the pinch weld that was here. Normally it looks like this piece right up here. It sticks out about 1 inch all the way down. And what I like to do is take a large hammer and just work that material over and bend that pinch weld to the inside. You can just keep working your way up and down and fold it over. So I'm going to do that with this piece here and get this one folded over to the inside so we can continue moving on with that. You can see that material moves pretty easily. You just work your way up and down there and fold that over. Same thing with everything down in this lower area. You want to get all that folded over first. And then we actually need to move this portion back farther as well to get as much clearance as possible, and so that this doesn't look like it's sticking out in the area where we cut the fender. Now this spot is a little bit more tricky. This truck does already have a cab mount chop done to it, so some of the material has been removed on this mount down here, which will make it a little easier for us to swing the hammer and get in here and bend all that material back. But if yours does not have a cab mount chop or anything done there, you'll kind of have to work around that steel with your hammer to get up here and move the body. Eventually you will want to put put our body mount relocation kit in just to get the most clearance as possible. But for right now, we're just showing you guys what you need to do to get this high clearance fender kit installed. So I'm going to keep working this area back. You want to be careful that you don't miss and crunch your fender. Of course, that's important. This bolt here, you can take this bottom bolt out of the fender, and if you'd like to, sometimes I will attach a bungee cord or something to that bolt hole and pull the fender back out of the way a little bit so you don't accidentally hit it with a hammer. So you can see that I'm just working this portion straight back right here to try and get as much clearance as possible when you turn your tires. You'll want to keep moving that area back and then kind of fold this lower pinch weld in towards the inside. Again, it's going to be a little bit tricky with this body mount in the way, but just keep working at it a bit to get as much clearance here as you can. So I've been working at this for a couple minutes now, and you can see that we've pushed all this material back about an inch. It used to be flush with where this body mount has been cut. So now I've moved it back quite a bit. This area right in here is pretty solid. It won't really move a whole lot more unless you actually cut into the structure of the body, which we don't want to do. So we recommend not cutting your pinch weld or doing anything like that, because as soon as you're cutting into those areas, it exposes and creates openings inside the body where water and other stuff can get into the body and cause a rust. So that's why we fold over our pinch weld, just like this upper portion here. We do the same along the bottom, and then down here where it's softer, push it back as far as we can to get ready to put our liner in. All right, so we've gone about as far as we can go with the hammer, moving this material back. We've gotten a good 1.5 inches extra clearance right in this area here, but we do still want to get this lower pinch weld and everything folded over farther back. We can get it almost all the way back to where this bolt goes in. But in order to do that, we're going to need to cut off another piece of this body mount right here, because it's getting in the way of us just swinging the hammer and being able to move that material. So if you want to, you can install the fender liner in this current position. You can leave this body mount as it is or trim just a little bit more. You can see that his tires have been rubbing in this area here and here. So you could trim just a little bit more to get as much as you need, and then leave the rest and go ahead and install the fender liner. However, we're going to cut a big chunk of this off and move on to get more clearance here, because we know that we're going to be completely replacing this body mount with our body mount kit in the next step here. All right, so we cut the corner of that body mount off just so we can get some more access to work this material back a little bit farther. Okay, so we have our inner fender well here all hammered back, the firewall pushed back really as far as we can go. We really can't force it any farther, or things really start to distort and you'll start to bend this lower fender mounting point, and your fender won't align properly when you bolt it back on. So right now we have it about flush with where our fender cut is, right back in this area, and that's where we want, it's about as far as we're going to go. So the next thing we're going to do is put these two mounting brackets on for the fender liner, so that we can kind of do like a test fit of the main portion of the fender liner and see how everything lines up. So the first one I'm going to install is this piece here, labeled D for the driver's side, and this one installs onto this upper hinge bolt right here for the door hinge. So I'm going to use a 12mm wrench and go ahead and loosen this bolt. You don't have to take it out all the way, you just need to take it out far enough for this bracket to slide in behind the bolt. So that comes out about 1/4 inch or so this can fit behind there. So we're going to take this slotted portion facing up, and we're going to turn the bracket and slide it in right behind this bolt. So once you slide it on there, how it's going to sit is this lower cutout is going to rest right against the edge of this washer. So it'll slide in and then push down and settle on that washer. So I'm going to go ahead and snug down that bolt. Since that is slotted, it is a little bit adjustable. I've found that I usually go all the way on as far as it can go and then pull it back out maybe 1/8 of an inch or so, and that's usually a pretty good starting point. The next one is this U-shaped piece, also labeled D for driver's side. We're going to take this screw out that holds the fender in that area. That's going to be a 10mm wrench to remove that screw. So we're going to take this U-shaped bracket and we're going to put the fender bolt through this hole here and then align it in this orientation, thread the bolt back into the hole. Now that hole in the bracket is also oversized, so you can see that there is some movement here, left to right. I typically try to center it from left to right, center it on the hole, and then I go up a little bit towards the bottom of the hole so the bracket is up higher. Also, you want to make sure that this bracket here isn't twisted or offset, and you want it to be nice and parallel with the inside of the door jamb here. So now that these two brackets have been bolted into place, we're going to take our main plate of the fender liner and we're going to put it into place just to see how these align with the holes. So these can be a little funky to get wiggled into place. There are some relief cutouts for areas like that along the edge here of the inside of the fender that this has to get kind of forced into place. So I usually start by getting the bottom down in there a little ways, and then you kind of have to work it in and push that rubber trim in behind the edge of the fender to get the liner down in position. And kind of a good way to align the liner is this upper portion right here. There's a bolt flange here that has to line up with a hole that's already in the side of the fender. You want to push this up into place until this is aligned with that hole where that little indent is, and then you'll know that you're about in the right place. So once that's pushed in, you can see your brackets behind the liner. We're aligning pretty nicely with this bottom one here, but the top one isn't lined up right at this moment. Looks like it needs to go up just a little bit, so I'm going to pull this back out and move that upper bracket up slightly so it'll line up with this hole. Alright, so that definitely looks a lot closer. We can catch this hole here, and I can see the threaded nutsert in that bracket behind this hole. So that's going to work. I'm going to go ahead and get my hardware started in those two holes. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and get these two bolts installed loosely, just threaded into those nutserts in the brackets back there. So for that we're going to use our 1/4 by 3/4 bolt. and then there is a 1/4" lock washer and a 1/4" flat washer on that bolt. You'll use a 5/32 Allen for that button head bolt. You can go ahead and get these started into those brackets. Do not tighten them all the way yet. And just be careful when you're threading these in to, of course, not get them cross-threaded as they go into the bracket. Now that those two pieces are loosely installed, we can put our other L bracket up top here. Alright, so now that we have these two 1/4" bolts loosely installed into those brackets, we're going to take our other little L bracket labeled with D for driver's side, and that one's going to go right up in this spot here. We're going to use the same 1/4" button head bolt to thread into the main fender liner plate. So we can put just a little bit of tension on that screw. Next, we're going to need to pop the hood so we can get inside to install the hardware on the back side of this bolt. We're going to install a 5/16 by 3/4 button head bolt with 5/16 flat washer going into that bracket. And then on the back side, we're going to have 5/16 flat washer and a 5/16 flange nut. Alright, so before we install the nut on the back side of that bolt there, we need to get this plastic spacer from the hardware kit put up into this space right here. So we're going to push up on the liner, and we're going to wedge it in right behind that plate, and then we need to install our 5/16 by 1.5 bolt with flat washer from the top side here through the tab that's on the fender liner plate, through the spacer, and through the hole in the firewall. And now that hole on the inner fender there is barely big enough for this bolt, so you'll need to just kind of get it started, and then you can thread it right through the hole and put your flat washer and flange nut on the back side. Now that bolt is all the way in. You just want to make sure that our 5/16 button head is in the hole on this side. Now we can go up into the engine bay and install the washers and flange nuts on the back side. So right here you can see this 5/16 by 1.5 bolt that we put through that upper portion of the fender liner. That's where you'll need to put your flat washer and nut on the back. Now this truck has a bunch of extra wiring and a mounting bracket and stuff here that make it pretty difficult to reach in there, but you'll have to reach in all the way from the back here and get inside there to put your hardware on the back of that bolt. And then the other one, the 5/16 button head that we put on, is right down in this area right here, which is a little easier to access, but you'll need to get in there to put your washers and flange nuts on both of those. Alright, so we went ahead and tightened down this hardware that we just put in the last step there. This 5/16 button head bolt, we used a 3/16 Allen wrench and a 1/2" wrench on the inside to tighten that bolt. And then this other 5/16 bolt here, we used 2 1/2" wrenches to go ahead and tighten that one down. Now the next item we're going to install is this plate that bolts both the main fender liner plate and the front plate together. We're going to go ahead and install this one. So this one goes right up inside on this piece that's installed already. And then we'll need 2 more of the 1/4 by 3/4 button head bolts with lock washers and flat washers. I'm using our 5/32 Allen to get these started in there. So those can be threaded in most of the way, but do not tighten them yet. We'll need a little bit of adjustability to get our front liner plate installed. Okay, so we need 2 more of those 1/4" by 3/4 button head bolts, and we're going to grab our front liner plate here with edge trim facing the fender. I'm going to hold this up into position and line it up with that plate that we just installed in the previous step. Alright, so thread those in most of the way, but again, not fully tight yet. And then we're going to show you how to align the front mounting plate and drill these 2 holes. Okay, so we need to get our front mounting flange on this front plate lined up properly here. So basically we want to line up the center of these slotted holes on this plate. There's kind of an indentation in this portion of the body right in the center here. You can see that in the middle of that hole. That's where we want it, this lower one aligned, and then there's a flat spot on the top of this bracket here that we want lined up with the center of that hole. And I'm just going to take the vice grip and hold this at the height I want and clamp that in place. Then I can drill the holes. So I'm going to use a 3/8 drill bit to drill right through the center of each one of these slotted holes. We got our 2 holes drilled. We're going to loosely install these 3/8 by 1 flange bolts with a flat washer and flange nut on the back side. Don't tighten those much because we still want a little bit of adjustment left to get this lined up and tightened down later. So now I'm going to remove my vice grip, and then I want to grab my Allen wrench again, and you can kind of push back on this front fender liner plate to close the gap between these 2 pieces here. Get those as close as possible, and then you can tighten down your 1/4" button heads. Now that those are tight, you can use a 9/16 socket and wrench to tighten down your 3/8 bolts. Alright, so we have all of our hardware completely tightened down for the entire fender liner install. Kind of the one last thing to finish up is going to be right down in this area here. You can see that we knocked some paint off of this area when we were pushing this back with the hammer. You want to clean up that stuff. I like to use like a little wire wheel on a grinder or on your Dremel tool, whatever it is. Get in here and bust off some of that loose chipped paint. Just make sure you don't dig into this edge trim, of course, here. So clean up all those areas. Watch for anything that might have split or broken open as we were hammering this area back. And you can seal that up with like some black RTV sealant silicone. Let that dry so that you don't get any water inside through into your floor mat area there. So once that's all sealed up, then we usually spray a little bit of paint on there just to make it look nice. And that's really the last little details you need to do with this area here. So I cleaned up this area, any of the loose stuff, paint and there, things that were just kind of hanging from moving this back. Now blew all the dust and everything off of it. Whatever you feel like you need to do to properly prep and paint, or you can apply some truck bed coating or something like that in that area. I'm just going to tape this off and spray some black paint on there. We don't have any holes or anything we need to seal up, so we're just going to paint it and we'll be done with it. So we got this area all cleaned up. We just sprayed some black paint on there just to cover up any raw metal that may have been exposed from this process. That really finishes up the install for the High Clearance Fender Liner Kit. Now, of course, we did have to cut off the edge of this body mount down here on the frame. Normally, we obviously wouldn't leave it looking like that. So if you are not going on to move on to our step 3 in this 3-part video series, and completely replace the body mount with our body mount kit, then you're going to want to clean this up and get a new plate weld on the end of that body mount, or whatever you choose to do with that situation there. But otherwise, that concludes everything for the High Clearance Fender Liner install. To see the rest of the series, click the link in the description below.